Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Paris Schutz has the evening off. Here's what we're looking at.
It's shocking.
Disturbing videos show kids crawling under freight trains to get to school.
How can we help?
Who's who on Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson's transition team.
Put more energy into serving this community as opposed to arguing.
How Woodlawn residents are helping migrants in their community following tension earlier this year. We're live from the South Side neighborhood. The city of Chicago has its first ever Poet Laureate. We hear from Avery Young on poetry beyond the page. And we introduce you to a local artist creating mosaics out of unexpected items.
And Brandis, as you mentioned, I'm in Woodlawn as part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Migrants bused from Texas were moved to a shuttered school about 3 months ago. We'll tell you about a new initiative helping them start a new life here in Chicago and the people behind that mission. But first, I send it back to you.
Joanna, thank you. Now to tonight's top story. The video is stomach churning, especially if you're a parent. Children crawling under paused freight trains so they can get to school. Joining us now to talk about the ProPublica investigation is investigative journalist Dan Schwartz. Dan, thank you for joining us. You know, the child that we just saw, in the video looks really young and small, and not that it is safe for any age group to do that, but how old or young are the kids that you're seeing do this? How old are they?
Kids are very young. I mean, those kids there in Hessville and Hammond are kids who are trying to get to elementary school. They're kids who are trying to get to middle school. They're kids who are trying to get to high school, and they're having to crawl through stationary.
Obviously a struggle for the families and the parents there, but let's talk about why these trains are idling and blocking traffic, thus preventing kids from getting to school multiple times a week.
Well, the issue of blocked railroad crossings is kind of the shorthand for what's going on is decades old. Communities have been struggling with this problem all around the country for a very long time, but recently it has gotten worse, and that is largely because of a new corporate management philosophy that the big railroads in America operate under. And this new management philosophy is called Precision Scheduled Railroading, or PSR. And in a nutshell, basically, it calls for the railroads to do more with less. So they're cutting a lot of their overhead, including employees, including employees who do maintenance, in order to return record profits for their investors. And
Dan, sorry, I think your Zoom might be cutting in just a little bit for us. But as you said, you know, it's not happening just here in Hammond, Indiana, but everywhere, and been going on for years. Does it seem that there's a reason for it happening more often, and is that related to changes in government oversight?
Yeah, sorry about the Zoom. It's happening more often. Sources are telling us, and we're observing, because of a corporate management philosophy the railroads, the large railroads of our country have adopted recently, and that's called precision scheduled railroading. Basically, it calls for doing more with less. They've cut a lot of overhead, and they're returning record profits for investors. There's been the federal government has a lot of regulations on the railroad industry, but there are also a lot of regulatory holes. So there's a lot of things that just are not regulated about the railroads and crossings.
So we have part of a Norfolk Southern response to the ProPublica story, and it reads, quote, in part, "We are actively working to identify an area where those trains can stage further down our line and have less impact on the community. In fact, we are working together with the Hammond community on a traffic overpass project that we've partially funded and advocated for." Dan, they're working on stopping or staging the trains before the intersections, but how long could a change like that take?
It's really hard to say. We don't have any transparency into their decision making there. So whether they stage the train, unclear to me. I mean, this is I'm glad they're talking with us and stuff. They've been good in communicating with us, but this has been a problem they've known about for a long time around the country, but also in Hammond, Indiana there. So it's hard to say when they would make a change.
You've done a lot of writing and reporting on the dangers of long trains or longer trains. Is running shorter trains, have they made that sound like that is an option for them?
In Hammond, Indiana, at that particular crossing, a short train would not alleviate this problem. They're parking that train there because it's between two very busy intersections on the railroad track, and I mean, even if they parked a mile long or less than mile long train there, it would still be blocking many railroad grade crossings that pedestrians and first responders are interacting with. But around the country, long trains are exacerbating this issue of blocked crossings. Long trains often clog up rail yards.
I know that you and the team at ProPublica there, you all are working on more railroad investigations over the course of the year. So we look forward to hearing about those when the time comes. Dan Schwartz at ProPublica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And now to some more of today's top stories. Former Vice President Mike Pence testifies to a federal grand jury. The testimony is part of a special counsel investigation on former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. CNN reports that sources close to the matter say Pence testified for more than 5 hours behind closed doors. It comes as Pence considers running against Trump for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. The white woman whose accusation led to the lynching of Black Chicago teenager Emmett Till has died. Till was kidnapped and killed by 2 men in Mississippi nearly 70 years ago. His death came after Carolyn Bryant Donham, then known as Carolyn Bryant, accused Till of accosting her and whistling at her. Till's mother, Mamie Till Mobley, insisted on an open casket funeral so the world could see her son's mutilated body. As recently as last year, there had been calls to hold Bryant Donham accountable for her role in Till's death. A coroner report says she died in hospice care in Louisiana on Tuesday at the age of 88. The Chicago Bears is welcoming a new player to the team. The Bears take Tennessee offensive tackle Darnell Wright with the 10th pick in the first round of the NFL draft. It came as the Bears traded back a spot with the Philadelphia Eagles. Bears secured the Eagles' 4th round draft pick for next year in that deal. Former daytime talk show host Jerry Springer died today. He made his mark hosting The Jerry Springer Show, a show filmed in Chicago that stirred controversy and defined tabloid daytime television. Before that, he served as mayor of Cincinnati for 1 year. A statement says that he died peacefully at his home in suburban Chicago following a brief illness. He was 79. Up next, Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson announces members of his transition team. Heather Sharon with that story right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson unveiled his transition team today, and it included 2 familiar names. Former Chicago Police Chief of Detectives Brendan Denahan and Robert Boyk, who led the department's Office of Constitutional Policing and Reform. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with more. Heather, first tell us why it's notable that these 2, Brendan Denahan and Robert Boyk, have joined the transition team.
Well, Denahan was one of the most visible members of the Chicago Police Department's team. So when there was a high-profile crime, he stepped in front of the cameras to tell reporters and the people of Chicago what had happened. Robert Boyk led the department's efforts to implement the consent decree, which requires the department to change how it supervises, disciplines, and trains officers. And in August, he was fired after warning former Superintendent David Brown that his plan to move officers from the reform office to patrol would really complicate that effort. So now that he's on Team Johnson, it signals a fresh but old approach, perhaps.
Perhaps. So Denahan, he's also been on most lists of candidates to lead the department after interim Superintendent Eric Carter steps down on May 15th, just 2 months after he took the job as interim. Let's listen to what the mayor-elect told you about how that process is going.
I'm going to continue to have conversations with leadership within the police department. I'm hoping to have a couple of more conversations this week before we make any final decision.
So who else has tossed their hat into the ring to be Chicago's next top cop?
Well, two other members of the former leadership team under Mayor Laureate Lightfoot, Anthony Riccio and Ernest Cato, have said they'd be interested. Also in the mix is former police superintendent Eddie Johnson, who told the Sun-Times he'd like his old job back on an interim basis. Of course, Johnson was fired by Lightfoot after lying to her, she said, about why he was found passed out behind the wheel of a running vehicle in Bridgeport. I asked Johnson if he was considering Eddie Johnson for the interim top cop spot. He said that leadership of the police department should reflect our best values. Not a no, but not a yes.
Okay. Mayor-elect also talked about what conclusions the people of Chicago should draw from these appointments. Here's a listen.
What those two selections offer is my commitment to building a very diverse, eclectic set of leaders who love the city of Chicago and the people of Chicago.
So who else is on the mayor's transition team?
Well, Professor Barbara Ransbury at the University of Illinois Chicago will lead the team with Charles Smith, who is an investment banker and owns his own firm in Chicago. They will have to work fast. Brandon Johnson is supposed to take office in 18 days, and there is a lot of problems facing the city of Chicago. He's looking to this team to advise him on.
18 days and counting. Now, the search for a permanent police superintendent, of course, that's still ongoing. Johnson said, again, that he hopes to select someone from within the Chicago Police Department. Here he is again.
I'm confident that we have individuals that can rise to the ranks of being the superintendent.
Okay, so where does this process stand, Heather?
Well, the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability is still holding community meetings, gathering feedback on what Chicagoans want in their next top cop. However, if you're interested in being Chicago's next top cop, the deadline to get your application in is May 7th, and then the commission has until July 14th to recommend 3 finalists to Johnson, who could start the whole process all over again.
Okay, Heather Sharon, always on the case for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. More than 7,000 migrants have arrived in Chicago via buses and planes since late August, sent by Texas's governor after arriving at the border from countries like Venezuela and Peru. And it's been almost 3 months since some of those migrants were moved into the shuttered Wadsworth Elementary School in the Woodlawn community following objection from some nearby residents. Others have joined forces to help integrate their new neighbors into the community by building cultural bridges. Reporter Joanna Hernandez and producer Acacia Hernandez spent time there for this week's In Your Neighborhood series. Joanna is there now with an update. Joanna. Joanna, can you hear me?
And Brandis, we're inside Concord Missionary Baptist Church. This location is just a few blocks away from the shelter, a location where asylum seekers can come to access resources and come to get the things that they need. Now, we're going to take you down and show you how people are coming together to help these asylum seekers.
Mall. That's where you go shopping para comprar cosas. Mall.
It started as an idea.
Across the street.
Senior Pastor Kenneth Phelps says he was called to action.
We literally just camped outside, passed out flyers, you know, and
People coming out.
to people coming out. Yeah, and just said, hey, listen, you know, we are having a bilingual service on this day, and we would love to have you.
And people came. A coalition of religious leaders, neighbors, and organizations joined together to create Chicago for All.
Our initiative is to offer a space of peace,
Yeah.
hope, right?
Yeah.
And do what we can. We do what we can with what we have.
And I spell my name.
Changing the narrative is what Pastor Phelps hopes will happen as community members meet the newcomers integrating into the neighborhood.
I invite the community to come in and to volunteer.
Yes,
right?
come and see.
More than 100 asylum seekers have moved into the former Wadsworth Elementary School building, despite backlash from some residents over what they call a lack of transparency from the city and frustrations over the lack of services for community residents. These pastors have a vision to move forward.
We just elected to, put more energy into serving this community as opposed to arguing with protesters.
¿Y dónde está? Where is the fire station?
RONALD CORTEZ is one of the migrants who is taking free English classes inside Concord Missionary Baptist Church.
Me gusta que me están ayudando a aprender lo que es inglés. Es un idioma que se me hace a mí difícil aprender porque desde el colegio no he aprendido mucho, no le he tomado mucha importancia, y cuando acordé, mira, ahorita estoy acá en Estados Unidos, en un país donde se habla solo ese idioma.
Cortez made the long journey from Peru. He's far from home, but says he is grateful as he looks forward to learning more about the neighborhood.
Falta solo conocer a la persona, y que si a ellos les gustaría conocernos a nosotros, que lleguen, visiten el lugar y que hablen con nosotros también, y para que vean que no somos malas personas.
Along with ESL classes, Street Soccer USA also got on board.
Soccer and every kind of sport brings everyone together. And so having that just little piece that they can have, that they can play together, just get away from this stress of, what they're dealing with.
Every Sunday from 2 to 4, anyone from the city can come and play soccer.
The Venezuelan South American community is just so vibrant and has so much culture, and I think that, if we can mix that with a lot of the African American communities here and all the other Spanish communities here, it would be great just to see how we can mesh together.
Meshing cultures is a mission Pastor Phelps and Pastor Cruz say they've been working on for years. As the initiative grows, Pastor Phelps is raising funds to renovate the church's kitchen to give people an opportunity to cook their native food.
We've learned is that in our group there's like some really talented. We got some cooks.
Yeah, we do.
We got cooks, we got barbers, we got lawyers, we got doctors.
And he's calling out his community to open their hearts.
I want to say to my community to get involved and to get a chance to know your neighbors and also to help us.
And Brandis, this is a place where Pastor Phelps has opened up and they're able to come here on Saturdays and have bilingual service. Pastor Phelps also has opened a center called A Home Away from Home, where asylum seekers can come here and access resources.
And Joanna, before we let you go, for people who may want to help by donations, how could they do that?
Yeah, we're told with Chicago for All, they're in need of sneakers for those who are playing soccer or basketball or baseball even, now that the Chicago is going to start getting warmer. So if you want to donate, you can come here and drop off the donations here at Concord Missionary Baptist Church.
Okay, Joanna, thanks so much. A local artist creates mosaics out of unexpected items. We'll show you right after this. Unexpected household items are the focus of a local artist creating portraits for her inner child. Arts correspondent Angel Ito recently introduced us to Keela Strong and her barrette mosaics. Here's another look.
Typically, mosaics are made of colorful broken pieces of tile, stone, or glass, but not usually barrettes.
I started with like wooden beads, and then I'm like, I need more color. So then I was thinking hair, I was thinking barrettes, and that gave me all the color I needed, and then it was like the rest is history. It just kept growing and growing.
It was her piece titled Picture Day that put Keela Strong's work on the map.
The barrette specifically speaks to childhood joys. I hear them. Edge control, rollers, every accessory used, it holds some type of memory for me. And it's just comforting. It's just comforting. I don't think I appreciated it as much before. Me turning it into art has given me a greater appreciation just because I didn't realize like how important barrettes were to my childhood. Let me see. All these accessories make this woman. So it shows the evolution of the Black girl from childhood to adolescence into womanhood.
From cocoa butter to bamboo earrings and every bobby pin in between. For Strong, these pieces not only reflect her growth as a woman, but the sacrifices it took to get her there.
I left my job June of 22 and decided to pursue art full time. So it's the first time that I've been able to give everything to the arts. I was feeling like I needed to give it my all in order to do well. I was already like still doing local shows, selling work, but it just wasn't enough. And I was never gonna be okay with giving whatever is left over after everything else. So I'm like, okay, I have to give this thing my all at least at one point in my life.
From a sketch to a completed mosaic, each piece takes around 2 weeks to complete. Strong says her future focus remains rooted in her passion, while also hopefully inspiring her son's generation.
I think that art has the potential to spark the minds of the next generation of world changers. It's important that we not only like show them, or mentor, kind of guide them, leave a blueprint for them, but also that we encourage people along the way. I think it's important that people feel empowered and to find a light within themselves, whether it's art or not, but if it can be sparked with an idea, I think that's the type of things that change the world.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
Very cool. Keela Strong says she's still trying to figure out how she can ship her mosaics with all the barrettes remaining intact. In the meantime, visit our website for more information about her art. Another chapter closes in the history of Black Chicago teenager Emmett Till, as the white woman whose accusation led to his lynching in 1955 has now died. Till's story has particularly resonated with Chicago's first ever poet laureate. Avery Young is our guest on this weekend's Chicago Tonight Black Voices. In this clip, I ask him about poetry as a cross-disciplinary artist. We start with a look at his performance of a work about Emmett Till.
Were you there? Were you there? See, got you. See him all dressed in black. Oh, were you there? See, Sister Spanked. Were you there? Were you there? Hear brothers cry.
So what is it about this approach to poetry that works for you?
First time I've seen any message being given to people through language has been through a sermon and the black preacher. And so a lot of what is going on through church and transforming the space with language is what influences the way in which I deliver poems and things of that. And so this particular poem, Emmett Till the Remix, is basically a kind of a retelling of a hymn that I learned in church. Was like, were you there when they crucified my Lord? And I remember just going to this school, and the young men had no idea who Emmett Till was. And then I was like, I'm gonna write a poem so they'll never forget him. And then I was like, well, how am I gonna recite the poem? And I thought about, again, a sermon and how effective that could be when it kind of initiates an emotional engagement, just as not just, oh, I'm listening to a story about something that happened in history. I want to tie this murder of this child with this emotion, and then I'll never forget this story just because the way it was even delivered, I won't forget it.
And you can watch the full conversation with Avery Young on Chicago Tonight Black Voices this Saturday at 6:30. And one note before we go, starting Monday, May 1st, you'll be able to watch Chicago Tonight here on WTTW and streaming live at 5:30 p.m. That's in addition to our 10 p.m. broadcast. So mark your calendars and tune in at 5:30 Monday, May 1st. And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Weekend Review and at 10 for Chicago Tonight. The CTA's latest efforts to tackle a staff shortage and improve unreliable service. And James Big Cat Williams on the Chicago Bears move in the NFL draft in Kansas City. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm dedicated to preserving the dignity and rights of all individuals.